How's it going? Today I'm going to be showing you how I install shelf couplers to the Broadway limited daylight cars. I'm using the daylight RPO as an example, however this works for every car. And these are the tools I'll be using, which includes a Dremel, the Dremel sanding disc, a sanding band, and of course the Kadee 119 medium center shank shelf coupler. I have a Kadee coupler height, a couple tweezers, couple pliers, and I'm using plastic glue. And of course, the Broadway Limited car itself. I add shelf couplers to my daylight cars because there's a lot of play in the up and down motion with these Broadway Limited designed coupler boxes. And the last thing that is not on the table, but definitely required, is eye protection. I was wearing it throughout the entire video while using the Dremel. So let's begin. Have your car in a foam cradle, and using tweezers, I pull the tabs of the coupler box towards my body and the upward position, which releases the tabs and allows the coupler to be removed. The Kadee 119 couplers need serious modification in order to fit inside the Broadway Limited coupler pocket. I start out by cutting off the coupler trip pins. I'm personally not a fan of them, and also it looks better when it comes to realism. The coupler trip pin is supposed to simulate air hoses, however there are air hoses modeled on the model already. And also I don't use the magnet system that Kadee uses, so I don't need any trip pins. After removing the trip pin, I put on the sanding band for my Dremel so I can shave off the top of the shelf coupler. The top of the shelf coupler does not work with the daylight full width diaphragms, and it hinders operations, so you need to remove this in order to use the shelf couplers. After removing the top part, it will look like a normal coupler from the top. The harder modification comes next, because the Broadway Limited coupler pocket is designed to use couplers that have the copper centering springs, whereas the shelf couplers have the whiskers attached to them already. So we need to remove the whiskers and shape the coupler just like a Kadee number 5 would be shaped. I'm using pliers to hold the coupler because using a Dremel, the coupler gets very hot, so be careful. I start by trimming the sides of the coupler while keeping the shape of it. I don't want to lose that sharp edge shape. I go back and forth comparing the old coupler with the new one to make sure the shape is just right. I also test fit plenty of times before finalizing. Another note is the whisker type couplers are slightly thicker than the non-whisker type couplers. So you want to make sure that you trim down the top or the bottom of the coupler just to make it thinner or as equal as the Kadee number 5 coupler, and it'll fit in just fine. Next, I'm removing the sanding band and attaching the sanding disc to my Dremel because the whisker type couplers have sort of a triangle shape, kind of like a wing on the sides, and we need to remove that so it can fit. I make sure the couplers look the same, as well as I test fit it multiple times, and after doing this about 10-15 times, I got the hang of it, and you will too. Note that the coupler is not really flush with the coupler holder, so we want to trim the height of the coupler and make sure that it's flush and even. I used the Dremel sanding wheel to achieve that, and slowly and carefully trimming down little by little, making sure not to overdo it, because if you overdo it, you did too much and you're going to have to throw away the coupler. After trimming the top of the coupler, it looks flush and even with the coupler holder. But before I install the coupler, I paint some black on the coupler because we shaved a lot of metal, and that's exposed metal, which could lead to rust. And I'm trying to prevent rust here, but I'm not painting any of the moving parts because it could get stuck or stiff. So be careful with that. But all I'm doing here is trying to do rust prevention. Installing the coupler could be a tricky part because sometimes I kept it a little too thick and it's really hard to press in. So I like to put it on my cutting mat, and with some pre-existing drilled holes, I apply some glue and I use the flat side of tweezers to press down the coupler into the coupler holder. Pressing down with the flat side of my tweezers also ensures that the coupler is nice and flush. After allowing the glue to dry, I insert the coupler into the pocket and press down, and now it's locked in. Make sure every coupler is at coupler height using the Kadee coupler height gauge. After hours of doing this process over and over again, I finally completed the entire train. Now my entire daylight has shelf couplers. Except for the end of the observation car, I kept it as a normal number 58 scale coupler just for looks. The reason why I wanted shelf couplers in my daylight cars is because although I checked every coupler and they are all at coupler height, notice that the right car is very high and the left car is very low, and the shelf coupler, the bottom part, is saving it from being uncoupled. This is exactly why I wanted it in my daylight cars. For whatever reason, the couplers love going up and down on these cars. If you take a look at the next set of cars, they are both equal and in coupler height. This is exactly what I wanted. In conclusion, I'm very happy with the results, and I'm super happy that my daylight runs perfectly without any uncoupling. And all it took was a little bit of dremeling and maybe a little too many hours of free time. Thank you very much for watching my video on how to install shelf couplers in the Broadway Limited Daylight cars. If you have any comments, feedback, please let me know in the comments section. If not, I hope you have a wonderful day, and I'll see you next time. Take care.